Good morning, Res and Shine. Welcome to Uncle Sam's Static Kaleidoscope, Bedlam Media's premier morning podcast. Is our show to kick off your morning right. Guys, it's Friday. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, X, etc., etc. Super excited. Starting off the weekend strong. If you don't already do so, make sure you follow my ATR show, Above the Ring, my wrestling show. We will be covering AEW Revolution. Revolution will happen Sunday. Next week, we will have a post-show to go over. I believe Ethan and I will also be talking about the New Japan Cup coming up. So if you watch wrestling, if you're into the Above the Ring show, do so. Take a look at that. Not going to get too much into it. But guys, I want to talk about today. It's Friday. After a long waited and anticipated release, Dune Part 2 is finally out in theaters. Super excited to see it. I'm going to be seeing it tonight. Me and my girlfriend. Really excited. Really excited. Just going to go through, might be some spoilers, but I haven't seen it yet. But I want to definitely talk about my anticipation, what I'm looking at, what I'm looking forward to with this movie. Just if you don't already know, I'm a big, some of you might know I'm a big reader. Man, my face is itchy right now. Sorry, I came back from Cincinnati. It was a good trip. Definitely check out my last episode about, work trips and whatnot. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future show. But I've actually read Dune. I read Dune before I watched either of the movies. So before I watched Part 1 and before I watched the 84 or even the sci-fi miniseries from the early mid 2000s. I don't remember. I don't recall. But I did read the book, and I love the book. If you haven't read it, it is a masterpiece. There's a reason why this is considered the best, if not one of the best, science fiction books ever written. Written in 1965 by Frank Herbert. First and foremost, the reviews are coming in. I don't usually follow reviews, but the fact that this is getting just rave reviews. Frank Herbert's son, Brian, I believe, said he saw it. He said this movie, these two movies are the best adaptations of his father's book, the definitive versions to see this movie, these movies. Obviously, there was stuff from the movies cut. It's always going to happen. Even Lord of the Rings, as much as they crammed into those movies, there's still stuff I believe that was cut. I haven't read that yet. That's going to be, it'll be a goal this year. Maybe I'll go through all the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. But there was stuff that was cut, but they're saying it's like pretty good. IMDb, it has been reported that it is a 10 out of 10 and has knocked down the Shawshank Redemption. It is rated higher than that movie. That movie had a 30-year reign. If you've seen the Shawshank Redemption, you know how awesome that movie, how great that movie is. And keep in mind, this is a science fiction movie. This isn't like, this isn't a drama. It is a drama, in a sense. But it's a science fiction movie. It's, it's a blockbuster. These are the movies that don't normally bring in the cash. Well, it brings in the cash, but it doesn't bring in, the longevity. Yes, the Marvel movies lasted for so long, but only for so long. Now they're starting to dwindle. I think we've talked about that. Dune Part 1 was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I've heard nothing but great things about this. I've heard that this is just, it takes the second part of the book. Because keep in mind, these two movies are the first book. There are 6 books written by Frank Herbert. 2 that were kind of written by him. I think it was more like his cliff notes for what he wanted to do after book 6, Chapter House Dune. So I haven't read yet. That's, those are books that I need to finish up. But it sounds like it's the definitive version. It's getting high-ranking reviews. The ticket sales have already surpassed what Oppenheimer has. The advanced ticket sales. And actually, I probably should buy the tickets tonight. Or today. At the time of recording, I still don't have my tickets, but I probably should. I I remember seeing this movie when this came out, part one, and it was a little upsetting that they only filmed part one because they weren't sure if it was going to do well. They didn't know what was going to happen with the movie theaters with COVID and whatnot. The movie did so well in theaters at that point in time. So 2021, we're looking at, I think it was streaming in theaters on the same day, or it was like a month apart. It was very close, but it still brought in, I think it was like 400 million during its initial run. Sorry, I'm looking at it as we speak just to make sure I have the numbers correct. Yeah, 434.8 million during that period of time, which is super exciting. And then it got greenlit, so they went right into production for the second part. And they're like determining in how this one does. They might greenlight the second book to do a trilogy. Wrap it. Well, I'm gonna say wrap it up, but I want to let people know there's a lot of Dune books, but I think the core ones are the 6 books, and then like 7 and 8 probably from Brian Herbert. I've only read the first 4, and as of right now, the first 4 books seem to tell the whole story, kind of. So, without getting into it, book 2 is a good lead into book 3. But if he's only planning on doing a trilogy, I'd be curious to see how they're going to do that. Because book 2, also, the other thing with book 2 is super small. It's like 300 pages, where Dune is 650. So they were able to break this up. They've done a great job so far. They've created this world. I just can't wait to see everything, all the new cast. We got Christopher Walken as the Emperor. We have Florence Pugh. I always mess up her last name. I shouldn't mess up her last name. As the Princess Aurelian. We got the whole returning cast. We're gonna have, what's his name, Austin Butler as Feud Harkonnen, the Baron's nephew. Now, if you've seen the original one, that was originally played by Sting, and they all had red hair. And there's a huge, spoiler alert, the way there's a huge knife fight. It's a lot more intense. It sounds, on paper, it's like, oh, they're gonna end with a knife fight, but there's a lot more to it than that. So, everything from what happens, if you've seen part 1, you know where it stands. And I highly advise, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. You need to see this. Go read the book. I might have to do a reread. Like, this book was written so well. And I'm so excited. It's a masterpiece. And I'm like speechless because I can't believe we've gotten this far. Because I was very concerned this movie was not going to get made. Because in 21, they didn't even know if it was going to do well. Because again, I mean, it's not Star Wars. It's not flashy. Let's put it that way. It's not. It's not Star Wars. It's not the MCU. There's not that those movies didn't have substance. Let me love those movies for what they are. There was a lot more going on here, and there's a lot more themes going on than just big space battle, interplanetary galactic, civil war. There's a lot more than that going on. There's a lot of politics here. There's a lot of themes. It's something that's going to come up, which I don't think it's a theme that comes up until you finish this first book, this first story, these 2 movies. And it's a very common theme, and it actually happens throughout the books. And without you know what? If you have, at this point, if you haven't read it, I would stop, hold on. But I'm going to move forward. So, if you guys, and keep in mind, if I'm not mistaken, George Lucas was some of the things that he got inspired by Star Wars with was from Dune. Because Dune was written in 65. Lucas was doing this in 73, 74, I believe, when he was writing the scripts. But when you look at the prequels and you talk about, oppression and, getting power to help the oppressed, the theme of power corrupts is very big in this. So it might look, and I think there were some reviews when this came out. It was like, oh, this is a white savior complex, this and that, da 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 da, with the Fremen, and then the House Atreides coming in. Nah, it's all about power corrupts. If you remember from part one, he has these dreams where they were like worshiping him, House Atreides. He's they talk about the chosen one who's coming. So I think it's important that I think that's a very, very, that's, I would say, the overall theme of the whole book series, because it does go into Messiah like that. It goes in the Children of Dune. It goes into God Emperor of Dune. The theme of power corrupts, even if your intentions maybe well-mannered? Is that the term I'm looking for? Probably. Even though your intentions are well-mannered, it can corrupt you. And again, this is something we see in, today's world. It was like that back in the 60s as well. Who knows? I mean, this is very... When did Frank Herbert write? He wrote this in 65. But when did he write the manuscript? Separate was 63, 64, 65. Yeah, there's a lot. I'm not going to go through the Wikipedia page. But I mean, even if you look at the time period when he wrote this in the 60s, we could go down this conspiracy rabbit hole, but we're not. We talk about, JFK. JFK's a man of the people. He gets killed. You get LBJ. We go into Vietnam. The drug war. Civil rights. This whole everything going on at that period. And people going down, wanting to get power corrupts. But, very important theme. I think it's going to be... I asked somebody online who saw this movie. Themes aside, sorry. Does the movie wrap up well enough to finish as a movie, but also lead into Messiah? And they go, without giving anything away, yes. So, if this movie does well, which I think it's going to do well, we're getting the trilogy. I really hope that he would do Children of Dune, because there's an argument to be made. Dune is incredible. Book-wise, let me clarify. So, in the books, Dune is incredible. Dune Messiah is all right. It's there. And then Children of Dune, those two books hand in hand. Some people would argue that Children of Dune is better than Dune. So it'd be awesome if we got that story as well. But, we don't want to get our hopes up. We're lucky we got the first book done correctly. I know, obviously, if you haven't seen it, Jodorowsky's Dune documentary, where he was going to do it back in the 70s, he had this crazy budget, this crazy idea, and it never came to fruition. And then obviously the David Lynch one, which it sounds like that was more of a studio thing, where the studio was like, hey, we're not going to give you access to your own film. This is our film. We're going to make the cut. And supposedly there's a 4-hour cut, which would be incredible to see. If somebody had that footage, we could go down the rabbit hole of studios taking over stuff. Certain DCU movies where they were just chopped like garbage going into the theaters, but then they re-released them later, wow, this is a way better movie. So, yeah, we're getting Dune Messiah. I know there's a series called Dune Prophecy, which I'm not sure if it's even filmed yet. Oh, it did wrap up. It wrapped up in December. So it's supposed to be about the Bene Gesserit. which there's so many other books. This is the other thing too with Dune. And once I finish the Frank Herbert books, yes, his son Brian's been writing these sequels and prequels forever. A lot of different things he's writing. They're all in trilogy too. It's like Trilogy Harkonnen, Sisterhood of Dune, which is talks about one of the talks about the sisterhood, the Bene Gesserit, I believe. They do things on like the Harkonnens, the Atreides, trilogies. There's so much. But I'd stop at those other two. I forget what books they are. I'm going on a tangent. But there's a lot. I think it builds off of that. It'd be cool. Maybe. And I think I don't know if I've had this discussion yet, but I am getting bored of franchises. They're all the same thing. It's over, with so much information you have to keep track of. But here it's like there's a lot of source material. Not as much as comic books, not as much as some of this other stuff that's coming out. There's enough source material, and the people who love Dune and want it to succeed are the people who love Dune. This isn't like the people who took Halo and be like, oh yeah, we're not even paying attention to the video game. Or, Kathleen Kennedy, I'll throw her under the bus. Oh yeah, we're not even going to use all the Legends stuff, which people love way better than what's coming out now. There's enough here, and if film one film one extremely promising, if film two is going to be just if not more promising, if he does film three and it does the same thing, hopefully if he doesn't do Children, somebody else can step in and go, hey, we're going to do a second, we're going to go through Children, God Emperor, make that stuff happen, because it's content, it's there. I would love to see those just become movies. I know, some people are like, this would be better as a miniseries, whatever. I want to see a movie. I want to see this on the silver screen. And go back to Messiah, if it does happen. I think he's doing the book Rendezvous with Rama first. He's been signed on to direct that movie. Denis Villeneuve, incredible director. Cannot wait. Guys, I want to know your thoughts in the comments below about Dune, what you think of Dune Part 1, what you think of Dune Part 2. Are you hopeful for, Dune Part 3, aka Dune Messiah? If you don't already do so, please make sure you follow us on X, you follow us on Facebook, you follow us on YouTube at Bedlam Media. You can find myself as DSLB Official. Don't forget to follow my wrestling podcast, Above the Ring. It is not just Dune Part 2 weekend, it is Revolution weekend. It is a revolution for the movie industry and for fans like me. And as always, guys, thank you for listening, and do not forget to join the Bedlam.